need to tell you guys that I'm very excited about this meeting and to go through sacred geometry once again. This chapter, Drumble will start going through the movements of creation and also the Genesis pattern. Few chapters ago, I kind of skipped ahead and did a high level overview on those, but I'd like to go back there and kind of discuss the movements, discuss the elements, and everything we can find in those patterns, or some of the things we can find in those patterns, because they're really complex, and the more we study them, the more we learn. It's not like we we get all of the information at once. As you keep digging into that, you just keep learning, and the patterns they show more and more. They keep revealing themselves for us because in fact we are a reflection of them, and as we keep growing we looks like they are showing more, but actually it's the process of unfolding ourselves, and then we can get more of that universal symbol. So I'm going to share my screen and I will do a similar movement we did a few chapters ago. Let's open the book here and I can kind of follow the movements or follow what he's doing, and we keep the discussion. Okay. Let's do that exercise one again. And so I will kind of merge the end of last chapter with the beginning of this one in this movement, but he'll mention how spirit was in the void and there was nothing to experience. So he started expressing itself. So the first movement is to project the consciousness as a octahedron. So there will be uh, a, a vector of consciousness going forward, a vector of consciousness going to the right, to the left, backwards, uh, down, and up. So with those 6 vectors of consciousness, the spirit created an octahedron. After penetrating the void with consciousness, he's going to rotate in every direction possible until it forms a sphere. Then we get here, we get a sphere. Now, with some boundaries, the spirit is able to see itself and project himself or herself to the very end of that edge and repeat the movement in order to expand him/herself. And then this is all symbolic, right? We're making this movement with shapes in order to get information of the sacred geometry. So with this symbolic movement from going to the first, or going from the center to the edge, we just created the Vesica Piscis, which looks like an eye, and there is some relationships here that will relate to light. So it's like light was created. And then to keep creating, the spirit goes to its boundary again and repeat the movement, right? And then in this second movement, we have the Trinity. So we have Father, Mother, and Son. We have the triangle, which would be a key element for many other objects, for many other forms we're going to find. So we have the sacred trinity here. We see this aspect as a fractal reverberating in the whole universe. We're going to have negative, positive, and neutral. We're going to have father as male, mother as female, and son or the kid as the result. So we have multiple aspects of this that will keep repeating itself as a fractal. Then we have the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth day, and we will get the result, which is the seed of life or the Genesis pattern. If we look this in 3D, we're gonna see the egg of life, and the egg of life, we will see that same 3D shape in biology when we have cells multiplying themselves, but we're gonna also see that pattern in crystals, metals, and structure. So from this symbol, we start seeing subjective forms getting a relation with the physical form that we can perceive in 3D. And then this is the first rotation, and spirit keeps with the same movement because it's like he wants to keep creating, but to create itself, it has to divide itself. So this is a movement of expansion. And let me, I would skip to this guy here. Then they go from the Genesis pattern or the seed of life to the flower of life. And here we have a symbol that was known by many, many cultures in the past. They all got to this, and interestingly, they all truncated the movement at this point because it doesn't stop here, but they all stop this movement here. And Junholo gives the explanation. They knew this was a very, very sacred sign and would reveal a very sacred system of information. And those cultures, those schools mystery, they kind of protected the information, truncating the system at this point. But to get the fruit of life, which is the next step, you need to keep repeating the movement. So as you keep doing, making the rotations in the same pattern, at some point, we're gonna get the fruit of life, which are those 13 circles. We have one in the center that came from the seed of life. Then we have 6 surrounding them, and more 6 on the exterior. And from here we can get just the fruit of life to start getting deeper or connecting this form with other forms. So female energy moves in curves as the male energy moves in straight lines. So consciousness is penetrating, dominating, while the female energy is surrounding. It's the creative aspect. And when you talk about male and female energies, they're not exactly related to the sex. They have to do with that, but it's not 100%. Like every man also has female energy, every woman also has male energy, and you can be a man and have predominant female energy, and that's okay. And that also doesn't necessarily relate with orientation. But then with this said, we have a female energy and a female shape. To balance this female shape with male energy, we're going to cross a line between the center of every single circle to every other circle. And we're going to find the Metatron's cube. So to go from here to here, so from a female to a balanced shape, just to connect one line from every single center to every other center. And then Drunvalo mentions he missed a couple of lines for 20 years. Funny. After that, I counted every single line to make sure they were symmetrical. Doesn't look like I missed anyone. But then this is Metatron's cube. It is a very powerful symbol. You can meditate on it, or you can meditate on Pablo's back. I have the same effect. And for me, it is a very strong symbol. In many plant medicine experiences, I saw the symbol, and typically when I see it, it comes with a very strong and divine energy. And then if we, from those lines, we essentially have all of the 4 elements, or actually we can do all of the 5 elements, the Platonic solids. And then now we start getting the system in creating reality from the cube of Metatron. What do I mean by that? So let's go through it. Then we pause for discussion. So if you get just the fruit of life, or you can think like drawing inside of the fruit of life, or just erasing some of the lines of the Metatron cube, the result will be the same. But we can draw the tetrahedron here. Tetrahedron will represent the fire. Fire is the fire of life. It is the will, the action. Through this, we have here four faces. In oh yeah, I just put a note here. In Sanskrit, we have a word called tattvas. That is the Sanskrit name for principles. Every element is actually a life being. And even Matthias, in his initiation show, he will mention that the 4 elements were the first beings to be created in the universe. So here we have fire, and the name for fire in Sanskrit, or the tattva for fire, is tejas. So if you want to connect with that energy to have more energy, like body energy, more will, more vision, you can use that symbol. You can use that symbol around yourself. You can visualize in your hand. And to make the experience even stronger, you can call for Tejas, which is the Sanskrit name. Because when those ancient languages, they carry some frequency. So when we talk in Hindi or Sanskrit, sometimes even in Greek, we bring that frequency. So we have this element of creation, which is fire. So it is the first one. We have the 4 shapes. I'll try to relate them with the signs here. So it will also relate to the sun itself, to Mars, and also with Leo, with Aries, and with Sagittarius. So we have a 4-faced shape, And if you think of the next number of shapes, you have 6, which is the cube and the earth element. And then the earth element will comprehend the material life. By material life, I mean any goods we have, our houses, the objects we have in our lives, but also our bodies. So we're talking about to feel with our hands, to experience the 3D world. Um, so if you want to connect with that earth energy, you can use the cube to help you. You can visualize a cube around yourself, and then you can visualize either yourself being a pillar inside of that cube, or you could imagine that cube grounded on earth, and those visualizations will help you to connect with this element. And if you want to enhance that experience, you can call for Prithvi, which is the Sanskrit name for earth, or the Tattva for earth. This is also connected to manifestation. So if you want to manifest anything like goods, it is a good exercise to tune in with that energy. I'm going through the symbols, and each symbol, or sorry, each element will split itself in 3, and we could think of the 12 system or all of the zodiac signs, and it's like each element will have 3 facets or 3 aspects that are more specific, connected to some different elements. Or in other words, we're going to have a cardinal, a fixed, and a mutable aspect of every single element. Then from 6 faces to 8 faces, and now we're talking about air. And air will be Vayu in Sanskrit. Air is the communication, the movement, the word, and also the mind. So if you have difficult concentrating, focusing, it might mean that you lack on air in your life, you lack on air on your natal chart. I'm a very earthy person, and that's why I do work on meditation a lot, because I do know that I originally lack on this element. So to balance this with the other elements, I know I need to put some more work here. So in order to have a clear mind, in order to have focus, I know I need to do some legwork and keep consciousness on that, to not keep overthinking and fall into the 3D too much. So if you want to connect with that energy of communication, that energy of movement, that energy, that mental energy, like uh, logic or logical, you can use the octahedron to help you. You can visualize the octahedron around yourself, and you can even call the element by its name, which is Vayu. And we have the icosahedron, which means the water. This is the water symbol. Water will represent the flow, the creativity, the intuition, and also the occult, because in deep waters you cannot see what is in the bottom. So if you want to connect with your intuition, if you want to connect with your emotions, you can use the icosahedron to help yourself visualize that symbol around you, and even call it by its name, Apas, so you can tune in with that energy. But for the long term, I know I need to work on this one, but I also find hard nowadays is easy, but it took a while to connect with the water energy because when you get into the water energy, you just feel all of the emotions, you have it. So it is a flow. Then it is a free flow of emotions, of feelings. This is water. And then, of course, you have the three aspects of water. And then it took me a while, but I was able to put the decahedron together. And I thought I was missing circles, but the key, at least for me, was to draw the decahedron with the Metatron cube in the background. So for the other ones, it's pretty easy to draw just with the fruit of life, but the dodecahedron doesn't really fit just using the circles. So as I draw the Metatron's cube, I was able to find all of the points, and every point I'm drawing in the dodecahedron, it is an intersection of lines in the Metatron's cube. So this one is a little trickier. Then if I might, yeah, you can see it is a symmetrical dodecahedron. It's just easier to draw with the Metatron's cube on the background. In the dodecahedron, it is the spirit, the prana. In Sanskrit, is the akash. This is a harder one because it's the unseen element. It is the seed. So it is the element inside of all of the other four elements. When you draw the star, for example, the pentagon, you're gonna have the four elements and the spirit on the top, the spirit driving the the four elements, meaning the higher self above the 3D, or the higher self leading the experience through the 3D, through the elements. So you can learn with the elements, but always guided by your higher self. Then if you see the the star pointing down, now you have the four elements on top of the spirit, or the 3D, the matter, on top of your higher self. So you're you're giving more value to the material realm. Now let me stop here. Yeah, let's pause here for discussion and any insights on the systems, on the elements, Metatron's cube. Any insights you would like to share, guys?
I have a thought. Well, I'm still trying to grasp the whole idea. So each of these shapes can be associated with a different element like fire, water, and each of them is found within the flower of life. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you take a certain like you did with the lines making a certain shape within the flower of life, you can see earth, you can see water, you can see air, and how and then they're all integrated though into the flower of life. Anyway, just my thought, just trying still to get the grasp the main idea of this, or just even a beginning of it. So anyway, that was just my little thought there. Thank
You
you.
got it. I would just replace the flower of life for the seed of life because this is the flower of life. It's kind of the flower of life is truncated. So
Okay.
this is the flower of life here. And this guy is the fruit of life.
Ah,
So we can draw all of them in the fruit of life, but you're not wrong because the fruit, the flower of life would generate the fruit of life. So,
mhm, right. That's
so
the
it is right.
cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just want to point out the two different symbols.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Um, I guess just going back to, I think when you initially started, oh, and you have to start this way is, you start with the circle and says, it splits, and it starts right the whole process, and it just instantly, I guess, I don't know, question I guess came to mind is because from one perspective you can say everything is now and always has been now, so there is no start, right? So that kind of drove me to the question, and I just answered it. Is like, everything has been, but from our perspective, uh like uh like this geometry explains like the laws of creation, right? How creation functions. It's the natural intelligence of creation, from the perspective of a created being, right? You know what I'm saying? So I mean that kind of, I guess, answered. It's just it's hard to wrap your head around, I guess, because you have to be able to change perspectives so much. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Absolutely.
but and none of it's contradictory either when you look at it from the correct perspective. I just think it's really amazing, and kind of going back, like this geometry is, like that's the purpose of it is to it explains how creation happens. So I mean, I don't know if that helps Kathy at all, kind of grasp it, but these are the
Yeah, I
building.
like that.
Yeah, so this is the creator's natural intelligence working, essentially.
Okay, and another question. So the when you started with the Genesis, was that is that a process that brings about all these different elements, or was that like another geometric sacred geometry?
Well,
Or
it
both?
is
Okay.
a symbol itself and it is a process. So
Okay.
the process is move the consciousness to the next boundary and project the consciousness again, right? So we
I,
went from one circle to the seven circles here, which is the Genesis pattern or the seed of life. And then it's like the spirit keeps expanding itself. And then I'll go back to the time because that's a good point, Elijah. But then it doesn't stop there. So this is a process that keeps unfolding itself. But this is a geometric pattern in a system itself. Because for example, if you get this guy, the Genesis pattern, and cut a couple of those lines, we're gonna find this shape, which looks like 8 spheres combined, and this is the egg of life. And we're gonna see this shape in biology, in molecular biology, when the cells are splitting themselves through mitosis. We're gonna find that in the structure of crystals. So this is not just a process, but a system itself. Each one of those steps, so the flower, the seed of life, the flower of life, and the fruit of life, it's a continuous process. But if you get each one of them, they are their own system. If you study only those geometric patterns, you're gonna see a lot of information contained inside of each one of them. Why he didn't get to that yet, but from this one we can draw the chakras inside of the flower of life. We can also draw the tree of life, meaning that if the tree is inside of the flower, we can see a fractal. So it is like a system inside a system, and that just keep repeating itself because that's what consciousness do. Kathy. So it's like we're trying to understand what consciousness or what the spirit or what God is doing through creation as we study those elements, those sacred geometries.
From inside of creation. You see what I'm saying? Because God, I mean, whatever you want to call it, God, whatever, is now and always has been complete, right?
Yes.
So, but we're inside essentially, and you can't look at it through like linear time the way that we're, accustomed to. So that's when you have to shift around. And so from inside, there's not like, so like, we say which came first, the chicken or the egg. That's not you can't do that. They both are and were, and it's just how it is. And then this explains the process from you pick the starting point, like from what relative to where you are, essentially. Does that make? That's the way I see it, at least.
No, that's great, and I love the way how you said you need to change perspectives, and we keep doing that all the time. Because if you look from my like earthly perspective right now, of course there is past and present. I was somewhere yesterday, I'm gonna be somewhere tomorrow, right? But then as you go up in the consciousness or in the level of consciousness, like we were discussing last chapter, now we see stuff from a higher perspective. And then it's all combined. And for spirit, the only time that exists is now. But I also like to see, that is another perspective. I also like to see time as an spiral, in a spiral instead of just a line, meaning that the cycles will repeat itself, but you're gonna be somewhere else in time. And I have discussed this topic a lot, and it is complex. I don't know if we're gonna ever find right or answer or a wrong question, but we keep discussing and unfolding this, right? But if we were able to like travel through time, right? At least with our consciousness, we can go back in time, for example, with the Akashic records, and we can heal an aspect of a life, but you cannot go back in time and change something that happened in another life. So you can go back there, have redo the meaning that you have or that you bring to your life, but you cannot change what happened. So in a way, that has happened. So past in a perspective exists just as future from the 3D perspective.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's a good that kind of analogy you made about you know you're there yesterday and somewhere else tomorrow. You can take that and shift your perspectives there too. And like, so if you lay down or sit or wherever you are, and someone asks you where are you, you'll say I'm here. Well, okay, and they blindfold you and move you to some remote location where you have no clue where you are, and they ask you the same question, you're going to say I am here. Well, who is here and where is here? You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can do these perspective things with yourself to kind of, and that same rule applies to, I mean, as above, so below, right? It's everywhere. It's a law.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes to like the Genesis pattern, right? Because it's all about the rotation, and then that creates the pattern. And so when you think about it, with what we're talking about is like time as a spiral, it's also the way we measure time, right? Within the rotation of our planet and then the rotation of everything around each other, so it's all interconnected in that, with like, as he said, like within the Genesis is that ratcheting of the shape, right? And so it's like that's as above and so below, and what we're experiencing.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can even go beyond time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so like relative to that, with like our place in time, as you were saying, like you were somewhere yesterday and you'll be somewhere tomorrow, but you can pinpoint that in the rotation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then even with time, it's the same with space, right? You spatial, you get moved and you say, I'm here. Well, when are you? Now. I mean, if you're always now. It's just the weirdest thing to me. you're always here and now, essentially, is what I guess I'm trying to get at.
You're always here and now and
And
everywhere.
now.
If you're the
Crazy.
consciousness yourself, you're everywhere as well, right? So
Right.
to answer where you are, I mean, it can be a tough question depending on the perspective.
Perspective. That's all. It's all relative to what are you relating it to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love how you remember about the rotation of planets and galaxies, Mandy, because yeah, as above, so below. So we apply the same concept in the atoms, but also in like super large scale. So it is a very intelligent system that keep repeating itself. What we're doing with the patterns is the same thing we do with life and the creation and like all of the creation. I mean, it's the same system repeating itself.
Yeah. I mean, this governs existence, right? Like small or big, no matter what, if it exists, it has to
Exactly.
follow this rule, right?
Exactly. That was great. Any other thoughts or insights here, guys?
I really like that comment. I haven't thought about that before, but if it exists, it will be a part of this. It came from this pattern.
Yeah,
That's a great idea. I thank you for saying that.
absolutely. Like I used to like it was so hard for me to wrap my head around it, and so I would just start saying like it's kind of weird, but God is everything, or you whatever you want to call it, is everything that you can imagine and everything you can't. You know what I mean? It's everything. If it is, then it has to be, and that falls into line. It's just so it blows your mind.
There's the last caviar here that we can find inside of the fruit of life. If we repeat the tetrahedron and do two opposite tetrahedrons, we have the star tetrahedron, which is the symbol or a big part of the Merkaba, which we're gonna start rotating at some point. So even that is inside of the fruit of life. Okay. Yeah, this is it is important to go back here because for me this step here is the basis for everything that we're gonna keep doing for the rest of the book, the rest of the chapters. If you understand this portion well, we can read any sacred geometry book without a problem. This is the basis for everything. And then
Seems so simple, almost.
it is not.
I know, but
Well, you can see, depending on the perspective, right?
yeah, I guess.
And I just want to show this. And this is a very complex topic. I will go very quickly here just to show something that Pablo shared with me. Thank you for sharing that, Pablo. I didn't have time to answer back, but I really like this. So this is the vector equilibrium shape. And this shape was found later on. And man, there's books just about this topic. There's a book called Cosmometry from the guy who found this symbol, and there's so much information inside of this. And when I say, oh, what type of information? Well, he's going to relate some proportions to multiple different systems, multiple different disciplines on Earth. So the name of the book is called Cosmometry, and it's only about this shape. So I will just go quickly here, and then after Pablo shared that with me, I found this video here. I will just quickly go through what is that? The guy pressed that, and it's super cool how this shape becomes another shapes depending on how you press it. So one thing about the vector equilibrium is all of the edges, and if you draw a line from the center to any vertex, will be the same size. So the edges and a line from the center and any other vertex will be exactly the same size, and we don't see that in any other shape. So that tells something about this shape. And then this is one of the students of the author of the book. I forgot his name. but then he's just going at high level through the vector equilibrium here. I'll keep this discussion brief because, man, there's a book about it, so I mean, it is extensive. But I found pretty cool to this this little toy here. I don't know how they call it, but it is essentially a version of the vertex equilibrium, and you can press them and compact it depending on how you press it. And just very quickly, two other things that he goes through this in this chapter. One is how the elements and the atoms have shapes. So quickly we will find again that all of the shapes or all of the molecules and atoms in the periodic table, they will essentially be inside of the Metatron's cube. It'll be either just inside of there, or you're gonna make the pattern and repeat itself, constantly until you find um, a larger element. And then if you go to a little larger scale and you go to the crystals, my background is in mechanical engineering, and when you're studying material science, the very first thing you learn is the Bravais lattices, and it is all based on geometry. So, I mean, we're going to find that in metals and crystals. It is all based on geometry. So, again, the system, it is a fractal. It is a fractal for consciousness, but also matter and how life creates. We're going to keep seeing the same patterns repeating themselves over and over and over. And I won't even get to consciousness, but consciousness is also a mandala. It is also geometry. So it is everything is here. Literally everything is contained here. I'm not exaggerating. Everything is contained inside of this cube. And I'll pause there.
Wow. Yeah. You don't. Yeah. You don't have to get into the consciousness, right? Like to this on this gross level. This to me that this is the manifestation of consciousness. So it's the same. It's just we separate it, right? And we're trying to get back to bringing it all into unity, right?
That's right. That's right.
Mm.
Wow. Any other thoughts or insights here, guys?
So my background is in biology, and it's fascinating to see, like, even when you look at chemical models of the elements, or even when you're putting together molecules and enzymes and protein chains, you look at a carbon chain for a molecule, it's all following this too. Everything is following all of this, whether it's organic, inorganic chemistry. I mean, all of these studies, all of these different methods to understand life, it's all pointing back to this, right? So, microscopes helping us understand and see these patterns. I mean, they fit the way they do because if we're solving the equation of, if consciousness or life is an equation and we're trying to solve the variables of that equation, everything reduces back down to this, right? The cube would be like, mathematically speaking, would be like the zero that we're trying to solve for, or the x that we're trying to solve for in any math problem. And so that's why, yeah, of course, of course, biology, of course, chemistry, of course, mathematics, of course physics, it's all going to fit and connect and overlap onto this because it all starts here.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It
And
really is.
I guess a really like beautiful thing about it that I see is, you know, you don't need a microscope or a telescope. You can just go inside of yourself because you're it too. You know what I'm saying? That's how like the Rishis did it, right? And the scientists, of the spiritual scientists, I guess. And it seems to me like our scientists today, if you don't put that spiritual aspect in it, every time you cut an atom or get smaller and smaller, you're just going to find more of something. Or every time you look out through a telescope, the universe is just going to run from you a little bit further. You know what I'm saying? So I think we really do have to incorporate spirituality into this to get the actual solve the equation, or else it's unsolvable.
100% agreed, man. And there are people that are tuning with that more and more and relating, quantum physics with spirituality. Like, not just, there's some people that don't have really like a scientific background and they would talk a lot, and some I respect because it's channeled information, but there are like PhDs in physics that are really start understanding how consciousness and how the mind will affect reality, and how it's not divided, how consciousness and the 3D is all connected. And I feel like this will just unfold more and more as the time goes by.
Yeah.
But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Just look at David Bohm, right? He
Yes.
was a quantum physicist, and then he started doing consciousness discussions with Krishnamurti. You know what I mean? That's crazy.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see the I don't know, the I'm sorry, the word escapes me now, but it's really interesting to see the journey towards intellectual discovery or research for a lot of these scientists, because it's kind of like you can see them go from religious dogma to atheism to, oh no, wait a second. And so it's losing the religious dogma to then like finding yourself, and like the more you research, the more you study, you land in atheism or agnosticism. And then the more you continue to study and the more you continue to read about these people that continue to study more, then it's like finding the path to spirituality back to themselves, like you were saying with quantum physicists, landing back in faith and a belief in God, but through kind of coming back around to this. It's really interesting to see that. And I've noticed that, like, honestly, even in myself too. And yeah. And then I really like what Elijah said of, like, we're here now, but we're always here now in all of the points around our own little circles. As we continue to ratchet ourselves, we're always here now. And yeah, it's so then obviously it doesn't come as a surprise that in a lot of ways these things come back full circle.
Yeah, I definitely went through the same process myself. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like I don't know how they say your spine is the axis of the universe. I think that kind of ties back to the here and now thing too. It's like,
yeah,
from your point, everything goes from there.
Yeah.
It's really crazy.
Sorry, guys, I felt here. I was trying to stop sharing my screen and I accidentally dropped off the call. My bad.
Oh no.
But thank you for sharing that, Pablo. And just one last comment on what you said. Even looking back in physicists, like Schrödinger, which was one of the first quantum physicists, after find out everything he found out, he stopped on the physics and he started studying with Buddhists. Same for Planck. Those guys in 1940 something, when they were kind of adventured themselves in quantum physics and discovering everything they were discovering, at some point they also stopped and they went back to the spirituality because they find out so many links. So I think it's interesting. We're seeing that now, but even the guys back there discovering quantum physics, they also realized that. But looks like now the common sense is not to accept spirituality. So there's also a school of thought that it's really trying to block everything that's new, because to change what they believe was right, just change paradigms. So it is a tough movement.
Well, it is fascinating, isn't it, that it's all related to consciousness? It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
mean-
for putting it in plain English for me. I appreciate it.
You're very
Everybody's
welcome.
comments are just so helpful.
Yeah. And just to keep a reminder, if I do it for myself, it's not even relating to consciousness, it is consciousness. Like that's all there is.
Right,
You know?
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's it. It's really crazy.
Good point.
And I super appreciate that even this circling back to spirituality in a lot of ways is also part of the scientific method, because you don't have to accept spirituality. You can experience that for yourself and you can replicate the results of that experiment for yourself. And so even the circling back from dogma, tradition, whatever we want to call there, right? Even that path, you're still following the scientific method too, which I love the duality of that, the correspondence of that, of the part of the logical aspect, the measurable aspect, versus the experiential aspect of your experience, Kathy, is so unique and so different than mine. But those are things that you can't unsee for yourself and you can't deny them within yourself anymore. You know what I mean? But
Right.
those experiences for you are so different than mine. You're still following the scientific method for yourself in your search for self-realization and spirituality too. And I just love how it really truly all fits together in a really wonderful way.
It does. It's beautiful.
Wild. It's like we are all, the creator, but we're all individually needed to create the creator. Do you know? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh, yeah, we were a little last time, you
Sorry.
guys, but I'd like to appreciate you all guys' time. It was a beautiful conversation, beautiful unfolding of those concepts.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Yeah,
Good
thank
night.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Ciao.
Good night.